All right. Welcome to the first edition of the yet to be named podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have bantered around a couple ideas, but have not settled anything yet, so that will come in the future, I imagine.
It will.
But today we are going to be tackling the subject of Mission Impossible and the legendary Tom Cruise. But before we get into that, because this is our first episode of the podcast, we just want to introduce ourselves a little bit. So I am Jeremy Matthias, one half of this two-man show, and I am a teacher and a coach, and besides that, I am just a movie fanatic. I love watching movies. It's what I do with my spare time. I've always loved movies, and so I just really look forward to the opportunity to get together with my friend Andy, who I have known for about 8 years now and is one of my favorite people to talk with about movies. And in fact, probably made us bad at being youth leaders, which we were together, because we spent all our time talking about movies instead of doing whatever it was we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Where'd the kids go? I don't know. We're talking about The Godfather. We don't know where they are.
Yeah. So
and I'm Andy, and I'm so excited. My name's Andy Appleby. I'm so excited to be here with Jeremy, my friend, my movie conversation partner. And I'm Andy. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I have 4 kids. I have a job. I'm busy, but I always make time for movies because I love movies. I love watching movies. I love consuming movies, absorbing movie knowledge into my brain. I grew up in the 80s when we didn't have very much to do, so I just watched movies, and they've stuck with me my whole life. I love them. I love to have conversations about movies. When you speak movie nerd like Jeremy and I do, you can almost have your own conversations, and some people don't even know what we're talking about, but we know what we're talking about, and we love it, and it makes us happy.
I think maybe my favorite thing about this pairing of us as a podcast duo is that we both love movies, but I am a notorious curmudgeon who people actually question whether or not I like movies because I like to criticize them so much. And not that you are unwilling to be critical of movies, and you've certainly heard you talk about movies you don't like. Yeah. But I think your joy of movies comes through a lot better than mine does. So I'm hoping between the two of us, we both love movies, but you'll bring a lot more of the enthusiasm.
Maybe sometimes my joy comes through to a fault, and I think a movie that's not so good, it seems better to me because I'm just so happy to be watching a movie. So sometimes we'll be a good balance, because when I overpraise a movie, you'll kind of bring me back down to reality. So
and there may be times when the opposite happens, because I think we're relatively close in age. I think, but when it comes to movies, there are certain types of movies or movies that came out when I was young enough to still love, and you were old enough to have discretion. That I can admit, like, I love this movie, but I was young and dumb when I first fell in love with it. Sure. And you were old enough to know better. So, but today is about Mission Impossible,
the myth, the legend, Tom Cruise,
Thomas J. Cruise. I don't know what his middle name is. So
I don't think Cruise is actually a part of his name. I think he just made that up. I don't know. Maybe our listeners. Do we have listeners yet?
We might.
Maybe the listeners can help us, but I don't think his name is actually Tom Cruise.
It is an unlikely cool name for an actor.
And then he became the coolest person, the coolest movie star person ever. That'd be a big coincidence if his name was Tom Cruise and he grew up and looked and acted exactly like someone who's named Tom Cruise.
Yeah. So before we get into the most recent installment in the franchise, I just want to ask you about your thoughts on the Mission Impossible franchise, which, by the way, I will just point this out. We're on number 7, but even me, who is a movie buff and pretty uptight about getting things right, posted something on Twitter or Instagram the other day, and I referred to it as Mission Impossible 6 because I lost count, and I didn't know the difference. And you know what? Nobody corrected me, or nobody noticed. It's the wrong movie. Because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But so, what was your assessment of the first 6 movies going into this one?
So we could do a whole podcast just on this series, because it's one of the strangest series to ever exist in the history of movies. My history with it, I'm 43. I was 16 when the original Mission Impossible came out. It came out in 1996, and I remember at the time just thinking it was a Brian De Palma movie. Brian De Palma is almost kind of auteur or a, I don't know, almost kind of an independent-ish kind of filmmaker. So it was like,
he's a filmmaker that movie nerds love.
Yes, there you go. And so it was like, wait, Brian De Palma's making an action movie with Tom Cruise. And I saw it in the theater, and I liked it. And then over the course of the next, I think it was 96 to 06 is when the first 3 Mission Impossible movies came out. And I thought they were good and nothing more. They didn't stick with, I liked them. I saw them. I liked them. They didn't stick with me. I wasn't having conversations about them. Maybe a little bit about, in part 3, Philip Seymour Hoffman's the bad guy, and he's really good. But it just wasn't a thing that was talked about that much to me in movie nerd conversations. And then after part 3 was over, I thought, okay, that was just the 3 Mission Impossible movies. And I wrote it down here. Mission Impossible 3 was in 06. We didn't get another Mission Impossible until 2011. And then that came out, and then all of a sudden, they just seemed a little better. And I think Tom Cruise, so much of this is tied into Tom Cruise, right? Because you start to hear this, like, I don't know if it's like the legend of Tom Cruise and how he's going to do these crazy stunts. So when Ghost Protocol came out in 2011, it's a good movie. It's really good. And I think that one is Tom Cruise like running through a sandstorm in the desert. And it's kind of like, I think Tom Cruise actually ran through a sandstorm in a desert. And you just started hearing rumblings about like, well, he's a maniac, but in the best way possible. Like he wants these to be real and authentic. And then in 15 we had Rogue Nation, which the big thing about that was Cruise hanging off of the side of a plane.
Right.
That was huge. And then one of those two had a big underwater thing. And it's like Tom Cruise held his breath for 9 minutes or something ridiculous. So it's weird because, like you said, we're 7 movies in. The first 3 movies almost feel like a completely different series to me. And then in the last, 7 or 8, 9 years with Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, and now this, it almost feels like it's a new thing, even though it's not. And they're getting better, I think you could argue, which is really weird for an action movie franchise. And Cruise is getting crazier and doing crazier stunts.
For sure. The first 3 movies felt like a series where they go, okay, this is what they're going to do with Mission Impossible. They're going to do a different filmmaker and make a movie in his style for each one. So they go De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams. And they were very distinctly each of those filmmakers' style movies, and they felt 3 completely different from each other movies. And then, like you said, the 4th, 5th, and 6th one, it shifted from being like, we're going to get different style filmmakers to, this is all about Cruise, and he's going to do different crazy stunts.
Yeah.
And
but it works.
Yeah, and it actually developed some coherence within the movies.
It did.
I will say, because of that, I'm like you. I remember things in the movies, but it's really hard for me to distinguish which one was 4 or 5, which one's called Ghost Protocol, and which one's called Rogue Nation, because I can't keep it.
Yeah, so I have a lot of movie knowledge in my brain, and I had no idea which one was Ghost Protocol and which one was Rogue Nation. I had to look it up, and I had to write it down. And that's not an insult to the movies, but they just become more known for Cruise's stunts. But yeah, it's really weird. I don't know that there ever has been or there ever will be something like this that is becoming more relevant and better quality, I think, or at least they're not getting worse for sure.
Well,
and that's just crazy.
And I made this note, and I wasn't even sure what the right word was to use for it, but I wrote down, is the Mission Impossible series like the Fast and the Furious series, but for dads?
There you go. There you go.
Like, that's young people love Fast and the Furious. It's just sort of this, it's like Mission Impossible series that has changed a lot, but like I don't particularly care for it or watch them.
Same.
But I have to be like, if I'm honest, Mission Impossible has a lot of the same problems, but for me, it's like, but look at the filmmaking, so it's a little nerdier version maybe, but at the same time, it's still just big, dumb action.
It is, just done at the highest quality level, because you've got Cruise, who, like I said, is a maniac and wants everything to be as real as possible and look as real as possible, and production values and all these things are just, it's a somewhat basic movie. It's just, these guys are spies, or they're whatever. I guess it's basic, but it's also, they're something. They're agents. Are they agents?
Sure.
Okay, yeah,
They're in this
agents.
movie. It's very unclear.
It is very unclear.
They try to explain it to a new character, and she doesn't understand because there's not much.
Because there's really not any way to it. But they're agents, and they have to stop bad stuff from happening. But just the stunts and the camera work, and even the acting, I think, for what these movies are, it's good acting.
It's great acting.
It's great acting.
I heard an actor, I'm trying to remember who it was, say in an interview that one of the best bits of advice they got from an older actor was they said, film acting is acting with your face. Mm-hmm. And as opposed to like stage acting, which is projecting with your voice and whatnot. And I think about that a lot now when I'm watching movies. I'm like, why is this actor so good? I'm like, Tom Cruise is so good because he's very good with the facial expressions. Just the little the little looks he gives. Yeah. And the little reactions he gives are very good. He's very expressive with his face.
They are. And Cruise loves a good close-up conversation, whether it's him and one of the female actresses in the movie, or him and guy who's kind of in charge of the thing. You know, when they're talking, just these intense close-ups on Cruise's face, and he is really good at it. And you can tell he knows that because he really likes that, especially in the Mission Impossible movies. It's just fun, and they're especially the last 4. They're just done at such a high level of skill, and you know, you can't talk about these without talking about Cruise's just unbelievable commitment to making these fun and entertaining.
Absolutely, and this is sort of the last point I want to make before we get into the most recent one.
Sure.
Is as we talk about this really being Cruise's show, is that the main character you can't even really unlink from Cruise.
Yeah.
I mean, Ethan Hunt, if I were to ask you, okay, we are 7 movies in now, tell me who is Ethan Hunt?
Tell me 3 qualities about Ethan Hunt.
A little bit about Ethan Hunt.
I got nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
He's Tom Cruise. That's all you can say is like he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I don't know if this is like this for the other movies. I noticed last night when we watched the new one, the second the title sequence hits, the very first thing to see on the screen is a Tom Cruise production. And yeah, I mean, it obviously is.
Yeah. So you know one thing I think is to its advantage is you know what you're getting with a Mission Impossible movie. So you know when people are like, "What did you think of the movie?" I'm like, It's what you expect. Yeah. It's what you know. Again, it kind of affects my judgment of the movie actually in a positive way because normally I am very much into character development, story arc.
That's not why you go to these.
But going into the Mission Impossible, I wasn't like can't wait for the character development and story arc. I was like, let's see what they do with these incredible action set pieces, and they deliver.
That's
That said, I do find myself at times in the scenes, the necessary exposition scenes, going, okay, when's that next action set piece coming? You know, I'm ready for it. But that's you got to have those.
It's just unbelievable how they've made this franchise go from 1996 until now, and it feels like it's going just as strong, if not stronger, than ever before. It's really impressive, and I don't know that there'll ever be another franchise that ever is able to do this the way that Mission Impossible has. It's really impressive. I would not put any of the Mission Impossible movies on probably my top 10 list of all-time favorite movies, but especially this run from Ghost Protocol into 2011 on, just unbelievably fun movies that, like you said, deliver exactly what you want at the highest level of entertainment.
Yeah. And I had mentioned this to you after we saw the movie last night. We went and watched the movie in IMAX last night.
You should definitely see it in IMAX if you can.
I meant to look this up and I forgot that I was curious the age comparison between Tom Cruise now and Jon Voight in the first one, because Jon Voight seemed so old in the first one. And even if you go back and watch it, it's just like he has white hair. Yeah. He's just kind of got an old face.
Yeah.
And I bet they're the same age, but Tom Cruise is still doing all the top-notch action.
It's unbelievable.
And it makes it like you watch it and you believe that Tom Cruise can do all this stuff, partly because he is, but even in the fight sequences, I'm not like, there's no way Tom Cruise is beating up a guy who's young and in shape.
Completely.
Yeah.
You completely forget that I think he's 60 or 61, I believe. Yeah. And I didn't think about that once watching the movie. I guess I did think about it in the sense that I can't believe he's 61.
Right.
You think of it, completely different than that. And I was joking to you last night. And I said Cruise is an alien. Like, he's not of this earth. He does things that people at his age shouldn't be able to do. He has so much charisma and just such an ability to carry these movies, which he is. But in the meantime, too, they're throwing in a lot of good supporting players and yeah, it's a fascinating franchise.
It does make me wonder with those supporting players, like how many of them really love like, oh, I got another Mission Impossible movie. I'm sure it's a great paycheck. I'm sure it's fun for some of them. Some of them are like, most of the time actors love playing characters.
Yeah.
They're like, they're probably, maybe they are the type to like, well, I'm giving myself this backstory so I know what my character would feel in the story, and the director's like, sure, great, go ahead.
Sounds good, buddy. Well, but in the flip side of that, like you made the comment last night on our way home from the movie, like Ving Rhames, who's in these movies, just what a life for him, where he just sits there and spouts off some I don't even know, he's like the tech guy of the group, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't. But they just get to pop in, and they're kind of got a front row seat for the Tom Cruise show, and it must not bother any of them because they keep coming back to the franchise. So, but yeah, if you're an actor and you're wanting to refine your acting skills or become the next De Niro, I maybe wouldn't sign on for Mission Impossible 8. I just maybe would take a pass and find a different movie.
But Ving Rhames is living the dream.
He is living the dream.
He shows up. Tom Cruise is the one who has to get in shape, do all the training for the stunts. I got to show up. I got to sit down, press some buttons on a computer, act like I'm hacking something, spout off some mumbo jumbo, and I get top 3 billing in this movie.
And he gets to wear his hats because I'm convinced that those are his hats that he insists that he gets to wear. Yeah. He's actually doing the opposite of Tom Cruise, where Tom Cruise is challenging himself and getting in unbelievable shape, and I think Ving is he's just happy to he's just living life.
Here's a fun challenge for you.
Okay.
Besides Ethan Hunt, name as many of the characters as you can.
Okay.
On the movie.
That is a fun. So I do know, and I don't know why, Simon Pegg's name is Benji.
I had forgotten that. I could not remember it.
I don't know. I know only because it's fresh in my mind, and we just watched it last night, that Haley Atwell's character is Grace.
Because they say it so many times.
They say it a lot of times.
Remember,
But the Rebecca Ferguson and what is the other actress's name? I've drawn a blank. Vanessa Kirby.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Literally could not tell you what their names are. And I know they've been in at least the last 2 or 3 movies.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you offered me $1 million right now to tell me one of those characters' names, I would not be able to answer that question.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there like I can distinctly remember parts of the movie where they said the names.
Yeah.
But it's just it's turning into the Peanuts adult just wonk wonk. Like
I know. I do not know their names, and I have pretty good attention to detail with movies.
Yeah.
Do not know their names.
Yeah. I think Ving Rhames, his character is Luther. Right?
Luther.
But I was trying to remember this earlier, and I couldn't. I just now remember it.
Yeah. Same.
So I think this is a good time to actually go ahead and jump into Part 7, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. What a name.
What a
first
name.
off.
What a name.
They did a great drop of the name of the movie in the first scene of the movie.
They did.
In the submarine, and I was like,
They did.
That's what that means.
Yes.
Dead Reckoning, I had kind of forgotten that was a nautical term or something for.
I don't even know that I picked up on that as I was watching the movie.
But the plot of this movie, which
you explained it because I don't know that I could.
The plot of the movie is the Mission Impossible movies, it's always a MacGuffin. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the first one is the Nautilus, the second one's the Chimera disease, I think. The third one's called the Rabbit's Foot. There's plutonium. There's a lot of plutonium.
I don't know. There's a lot of plutonium.
This one is literally called the Entity. The Entity. Like they couldn't even bother coming with something not generic.
But I feel like it's okay.
It is.
Because again, like we were saying, I don't go to these movies for nuance or I wonder if the bad guy in 7, if that ties back to that Easter egg in Part 3, and I don't care. That's the thing. And like you were saying, I'm pretty jolly and happy when it comes to movies, but I do like my movies to make sense, and I do like when one thing leads to, especially in a series. But that's what I'm saying when I'm saying this is such a fascinating series. It just doesn't matter, and I'm okay with it. Right. I don't care. They could just in Dead Reckoning Part 2, they could come up with another new bad guy, and it could just be called The Thing. It just doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
You're right. So the entity, the plot of the movie is that the entity is an artificial intelligence that can essentially infiltrate any world system. It can, mess up the whole world, basically. And so there's two parts to a key that people are trying to get together that can give you access to control it or shut it down. Ethan wants to shut it down because nobody should have that power. All of the world powers want to control it. But basically, and you brought this up last night, I think Cruise is really good at, let's just give people good guys and bad guys that nobody's going to have any problem with being the bad guys. Nobody's going to have a problem with generic AI being the bad guy.
Cruise is not looking to ruffle any feathers. He just wants to be everybody's friend, I think. And same with, like we talked about with Top Gun Maverick, or privately we've talked about this. They purposefully, I think, you don't know really who the bad guys are in Top Gun Maverick either, or where they are even.
Right.
Maybe you do, and I forgot.
They're like, good luck guessing, because at one point they're going to be flying through like a desert canyon, and then they're going to be out in the snow and the woods.
It just doesn't. And again, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I made that point last night. Cruise is really good, or Cruise and Chris McQuarrie together, the writer-director, they are really good at coming up with ideas that they can convince you it's threatening. Like, there's plutonium, or there's this or that. They're good at making it feel threatening, but I think they purposely don't get real specific. So you don't really have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out. And there's not even a lot to pick apart about it, because it's a key.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a key.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's a MacGuffin. It's literally just a plot device to say, let's make things happen. Let's have them go on chases. Let's have them jump off things.
And that's all it needs to be. They are really good at knowing what they don't need to do in these movies.
Right.
Who cares? As long as there's amazing car chases and Cruise jumping off of mountains and all these things, who cares? I'm happy with the key.
And this is where I will say, like, why I do think there's great acting in these movies is because the few scenes that were exposition, there were times when I thought to myself, this would be really funny if you just took the script and got some like students, student theater do it and like read the lines that they're reading. Some of them are so ridiculous, but they deliver them with such earnest and sincerity that, like you were saying, they get you to buy in.
They do.
But I mean, when
the screen, I don't think anyone would talk about the Mission Impossible movies and great screenwriting, great screenplays, but they do a really good job of writing dialogue, and then they get the right people to deliver the dialogue, where even if the threat is vague and it's just a plot device, they make it sound convincing, that, this is scary. Or not scary, but, this is a threat. We do need Ethan Hunt to jump out of a plane to get the key to the entity. And you just buy into it. They give you just enough, and they execute it, like I was saying earlier, they just execute everything at the highest level. So I believe it, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, they sometimes when you step back and think about it, like, it is kind of funny. Like, they make things so simple to understand. Yeah. Like, the two parts of the key, they're like, when you put it together is how they'll verify that each part is real. And I'm like, well, how does that work? Well, it works out when they put them together, little lights
blink. Okay. Good enough.
Anybody can understand. Oh, the lights are blinking?
Yeah.
That means we're good.
Definitely. And never at any point last night when I was watching the movie was I like, well, that's stupid. I just never think that. I just think, okay, that sounds great. I don't, because you just don't need it. Because you've got Cruise and you've got all this amazing action. So they really do a great job of giving you just enough information, and they're vague enough, and it just all works.
Yeah. So I do think it is fascinating that the villain of this movie is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
That it's computer simulation, basically. And it's basically what Tom Cruise's whole mission in life is about, is in his industry, in movies, computers and computer effects are the bad guy, and do everything real and practical and analog. And so I think he took some of real life and said, we're going to make the villain be computers and artificiality, and that's what we're trying to combat in Mission Impossible, and it's also what I'm trying to combat here in real life.
Yeah.
I'm not going to CGI me jumping off of a mountain on a motorcycle. I'm going to do that.
I'm going to do it. I think I saw where he did it, 6 times in one day. So yeah, that's what I mean when I say he's a maniac, and I mean that as praise. He is a maniac who is willing to literally risk his life so that people like you and I can sit in the IMAX and marvel at what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, last night, even though you know it's coming, it was basically that's how they promoted the film. Right. It's him riding that motorcycle off that mountain. And when that moment happened, I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. I thought it was great.
Oh, yeah, it did not.
It didn't disappoint.
Did not disappoint.
And that's why I say, see this movie on the IMAX if you can. Because it's really impressive to watch him ride a motorcycle off a mountain knowing that that is what he actually did.
Yeah. And it does help knowing that he did that, because the reality is CGI is so good now. A lesser actor would have done that. They would have green screened it, and it would have probably looked pretty good.
That's what the funny thing is.
But
he really doesn't have to do what he does.
It's just knowing that he, like, when you know that he did.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Honestly, like, I mean, like, it would have been a cool shot, but if it was any other movie, I'd have been like, well, it's CGI, it's a cool shot, whatever. But knowing he did it just makes me be like,
it really adds to it.
Yeah.
It really, really does. And like you said, the CGI is so good now. He doesn't have to, but it's just knowing his commitment, his passion, his desire to, like I said, entertain people like you and I, who will sit in the theater. And, you know, I wanted to lean over to you last night when he did that and just say, that was awesome. But I didn't. I didn't want to be that guy who was talking during a movie. But it's awesome. And then as he's he's coming down on his parachute, I assume that's really just Cruise coming down on his parachute.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's green screen or anything else. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So before we get in, we've been trying to stay out of spoiler territory,
we're keeping it vague.
You know, and but we also want an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of those things that people might not want to spoil. So the last thing I want to talk about is just how did you feel the movie did, wrapping up being a part one, and, you know, did it leave you just anxious for the next one, or did you feel like it wasn't complete?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what I really liked about it, the part one, part two thing, I have mixed feelings about. You know, that's in the last few years, that's somewhat become of a Hollywood thing. Like, I'm trying to, you know, Hunger Games or Dune's doing it right now.
The new Spider-Verse.
Yeah, Spider-Verse is doing it. I haven't landed whether I'm for it or against it yet. I don't know. In this movie, I think it's fine. It doesn't bother me at all. And I think they, you know, Chris McQuarrie, Cruise, all these guys are involved. They're obviously smart. I think they constructed the movie. They did a really good job of constructing the movie so it works just fine, just as Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. I never felt like it was just kind of stringing me along until we get to Part 2. Or it certainly isn't like we're holding back and building to Part 2, and that's when we'll really unleash the big stunts. I mean, this movie doesn't hold anything back, I don't think. So it was fine to me. I liked it. I liked that I want it to work as its own movie, but also make me feel like there's still more story to tell for part two, and I thought it did both of those things.
Yeah, I actually think I am pro these movies doing these two things, and I think the reason why is, even though this one was still a pretty long movie,
it is long.
I don't like if they are trying to cram too much into one movie. Mm-hmm. If the movie gets like too long, I would rather just say, well, just break it up. Yeah. Let things have time to breathe. Mm-hmm. You know, I would hate to think like once we get part two and we see all the stuff that's in there, and I think if they had made that one movie, I bet we'd have to start thinking about all the stuff they'd have to cut out, all the action scenes they'd have to shrink down. Mm-hmm. And it's like, don't do that. Just give yourself the time to exist in those action scenes and let them, you know, take up as much time as they need. Definitely. Instead of cutting it short.
You're right. And this movie doesn't feel rushed at all. I mean, they're very happy to let this be Dead Reckoning Part 1 for right now. It didn't seem like, I don't know, it definitely felt like it got all their focus and attention. And I do agree with you. Maybe you just convinced me that I'm pro splitting up, because I don't want anything to be rushed either. You know, I've talked about this before. Long movies don't bother me at all.
Right.
I'm not scared of a 2.5 hour, 3 hour runtime. I think this one's 2.5 probably. I didn't even look.
I think so.
Probably about 2.5. They definitely give everything time to breathe, and you need it with these movies because they're such big I don't think they would work if it just went from one action set piece to another. You do need, whether you like the exposition or don't or whatever, I do think you need it. And I had no problem with this being part 1 of 2. But it also did do a good job of, and I guess maybe this is just more of a Tom Cruise thing. Well, what's next?
Yeah.
What's he gonna do for part 2? So you've got that anticipation and yeah.
I think they nailed the pacing. I think they nailed a good stopping point.
I think so too. And I'll add a few comments once we let people know we're going to talk about some spoilers.
Yeah, I'll just say I think even saying that I'm pro of the splitting up of movies if that's what they need for the time's sake. There are times in those movies where I'm like, I can tell the movie's been going for a while. They've got to be getting closer to the cutoff, and I'm like, we're not at a good spot for resolution. Like, it's either going to have to be total cliffhanger or, like, they're going to have to cram something in. This one, by the time we got to the end, like, I was like, great stopping point. I never felt like they rushed at the end or cliffhangered us. It just felt like they paced it right and said, this is a good, logical conclusion for the end of this one. And, I didn't get any sort of anxious or feel like it was starting to overstay its welcome either way.
Yeah, I thought it was, pacing was great.
Yeah. So now we'll get into spoilers a little bit. So anybody listening or watching who hasn't seen it yet and doesn't want anything spoiled, though frankly, there's not exactly like a lot to spoil.
I was thinking about that before we started. There's just not a ton to spoil really, but we'll get a little more specific if we need to.
Right. There's really, I maybe don't want to spoil a great visual gag, if we reference it and then it's coming. Or, there is one dramatic death that we'll talk about. So
the quote with quotes, dramatic
quotes for sure.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to talk about is just what were some of your favorite moments of the movie or things you enjoyed most of the movie. Now that we're not afraid to just go out and say straight up what it was.
For sure. Oh gosh, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to digest, and I even found myself having to go back and be like, okay, like I had to kind of rethink the movie in my mind just because the action it is so big. But listen, I'm not gonna try and get too cute here. The action set pieces. I mean, there's a car chase sequence where Cruise and did we decide her name was Grace?
Yes.
Grace.
But I love that you still call him Grace. Not Ethan and Grace. It's Cruise and Grace.
You're so right. Cruise and Ethan Hunt are just the same person at this point. They're handcuffed together, and there's a pretty long car chase. I was really surprised how I thought it had to have been 10 minutes, I bet.
Yeah.
And I just listen, give me a good car chase, and I'm happy. And I was saying to you last night, these movies do all the things that action movies do. There's car chases, there's fights and stuff. But Cruise always wants to, but how can we just change it a little? How about if I'm handcuffed to someone?
Yes. And also just the visual gag that it's a tiny car.
That was a great gag.
They walk up and there's that typical spy car looking thing, whatever it was, the sports car. And then he presses the button and a little...
Yeah, that was great.
Little yellow... I don't know what it was. It was smaller than a Mini Cooper.
I'm not a car guy. I don't know. It was a teeny tiny thing. It was a good gag.
And was run differently, so it was hard to drive because the buttons. It was just all of it was great. Yeah,
it was.
It was a great mix of action and little bits of comedy throughout it.
Yeah, kind of funny. I chuckled a few times in this movie. Cruise, he knows how to find comedy in these absurd action movies. He finds this little. I don't think Cruise necessarily maybe himself is funny. But he just knows how to react or make, like you were saying earlier, his facial expressions.
I do think he's funny.
You think he's funny?
I think
he probably is.
He's at least on camera funny. I think he's performer funny.
Yeah.
He may not be like hanging out with them at a party funny. He's probably weird.
Well, like Tropic Thunder or something.
But
he's really
Tropic
funny.
Thunder, I think he knows how to.
He probably does.
He's great at, again, his facial expressions, the little exasperations when things are crazy, but all he gives it is that little Cruise
That's all he's got to do. He's got to do. That's all he's got to do. So I really like the car chase. Gosh, and I'm sure I'm skipping stuff, but I think the car chase and then really just the whole last, 30 minutes of the movie, because you've got the motorcycle off the mountain, and just a train is just a great setting for an action movie. I knew enough about this movie going in just from the previews or different little things I had read. They didn't really hide the fact that the last act of the movie was going to be on this train, and I remember thinking, this is probably going to be awesome because I think a train's a good setting for an action movie. Plus, when it's a Mission Impossible and it's Cruise and Chris McQuarrie, and they want to do this at the highest level. I knew it was going to be good. I had high expectations for that action sequence, and I thought it delivered. You got fighting on top of the train which I really have to question if it's that easy to stand on top of a moving train.
Yeah,
they really make it look easy in this movie.
They never. It was kind of unclear just how fast the train was going, because I did think about the first Mission Impossible, which it felt sort of like an ode to.
Yeah,
but the first Mission Impossible, they were on like a bullet train or something, and their skins like flapping back.
This
and
one,
like,
they're just
hanging on for dear life. They just stood up.
They could have been playing cards up on top of that train. They made it look really easy, but it still works. And definitely my favorite part, if I had to isolate something, is just towards the end, for whatever reason, the bad guys got the bridge to blow up. So part of the train kind of goes flying off this bridge. The other part of the train is still hanging on. And I just thought that was spectacular. Just great action. A lot of it's cliches, but again, when it's Cruise and it's these guys making these movies, they're hanging and something's about to fall on them. I've seen that in a million movies. But in this one, it just seems like it's done better. It looks more realistic, probably because it was, and I just thought that was great.
You're absolutely right. It's just about the execution of the idea, because I was thinking about, if there are problems with, again, part 1 and part 2, it's that when you're watching a part 1, you can't have total resolution,
right?
And like certain key characters can't die. So at the end, when they're having this fight on the top of the train, I never believed that Cruise or the bad guy could win, because they both got to be around for part 2, but it doesn't matter because it's just the execution.
Yeah,
it's
unbelievable.
I wasn't watching going, what's going to happen, as far as it's more how it's going to happen.
That's a great way to put this whole movie. It's really, to me, none of it is about what's going to happen. You more or less know. I mean, they might try to throw in a death, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute. To me, that just falls flat. It's not the fault of the actors or the actresses or anything. It's just because that's not what these movies are about. It's just literally about how they do it. How did they do it? I mean, truly, it just looked like they were fighting on top of a train going, 200 miles an hour. That's just what it looked like. It's just phenomenal. And the other moments, they just don't matter that much.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Let's talk about this death.
Okay, go for it.
Is Rebecca Ferguson the actress?
It's Rebecca Ferguson.
And
the character's name, between the two of us, we do not know.
I think she's definitely been in 3 movies. I think
Isla or Isla?
It's something like that.
It's something like that, I think.
But she dies, and I think it's supposed to have an emotional impact because we've had her in 3 movies, but
it had none.
It had none. In fact, they kind of did a death fake out with her character earlier in the movie, and I was at that moment I was like,
okay,
yeah. And then it was like, oh, she's not dead. It was a fake out. And then later she does die.
She does, and
it's like, okay,
just couldn't mean less.
So I sit there and go like, is that the fault of the Mission Impossible franchise? Would it be a better franchise if they made me care about her? And maybe it would. But it's just, like we said, this is what the movies are. There's a lot of dialogue in these movies that I think that's great trailer dialogue. And so like the bad guy saying, you're going to have to make a choice between this girl or that girl. One of them is going to die, and it's on you. And does his Cruise look like, no. And like, that's great, like, trailer fodder.
But again, as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, it makes no difference to me which one he saved.
In fact, we talked about this a lot last night. There is a type in the casting of these girls.
Oh, my gosh.
Almost like it's going to be white girl with long brunette hair.
Yeah.
That's pretty generic looking, and because before them it was Michelle Monaghan, and her and Rebecca Ferguson look too much alike, and the new one looks too much alike. And it's like, and you're just replacing one.
Really, none of them. It's not like any of one of them and Cruise have any kind of amazing chemistry together. They're good. Their acting is good, but I'm telling you, Tom Cruise is an alien. He doesn't need to date or have chemistry with anyone. It's completely irrelevant what kind of connection he has with these different women. It's just like, so they introduce the Haley Atwell character. Who is she? Where does she come? I don't know. The movie doesn't know, I don't think. They really don't bother to explain it. She's a thief?
Yeah. Not terribly interested in it. So,
no.
Like, the movie's not.
And you could swap out any of those women and Cruise, or any of those women with Cruise. It makes no difference. Yeah. None at all.
Yeah. In fact, Tom Cruise, it's always unclear, like, how romantic he is with these characters, because I think Cruz has become such an alien, as you said. Like, they don't really do romantic scenes anymore. He never kisses the girls in these movies, but there is some sort of chemistry. But also, like, he will die for these women. Cruz is all about these women.
He meets Haley Atwell's character, and 30 seconds later, I think he's willing to take a bullet for her.
Yes.
For no reason at all. And the Rebecca Ferguson character, who does die a little bit earlier in the movie before she dies, they're standing out on a balcony in Rome, maybe? I also don't even know what city they're in.
Venice, maybe?
And so they kind of have, like, they cuddle for a minute on the balcony, and that's it. And I don't really know why they did that, or did they have a path? Were they? I don't know.
So again, I think Cruz is just always very flirty with these girls. It's like Cruz knows how to flirt, but he doesn't actually know. No. Once you get past that, how things work.
No idea what to do after that.
He's an alien. He's only read that part of the instruction manual.
He doesn't know. He hasn't read the next chapter of the How to Act Like a Human Being book. So, but does it make the movie better or worse? I don't think so. The movie just keeps going to the next action sequence. So.
Yeah, I think even though Mission Impossible takes place in the real world,
right,
you kind of approach it with the same mentality you would a Marvel movie, where you go like, I get it, I'm here for the ride, the spectacle, the fun. Ethan Hunt's a character right along with Tony Stark or something. Just like, he's just gonna be fun to watch.
He is.
Be on screen.
And I will say too, once the Rebecca Ferguson character gets killed, they have, Cruz has his moment where he's holding her on this bridge, and I think in the very next scene, very briefly, Ving Rhames' character and Haley Atwell's character have like a 5-second conversation about Rebecca Ferguson, and then she just never. It's like, she died. Okay, let's go. We got to go to this train now. There's not even the scene of Cruz being like, "This is for whatever her name was." We don't even get that. She just she died. I mean, I don't know. Do they have what happens to this poor woman's body? They don't, because they technically don't exist, I think, in this agency. So they just leave her on the bridge, I guess, and move on. And it definitely doesn't hurt the movie, in my opinion, but it has zero emotional, resonance at all. You just go, oh, okay, and then you move on. So,
right, I feel bad. Like, don't hear me saying this. Like, this is the Jeremy Matthias perspective. I do feel like it's that way with all the female characters in these movies.
Oh, definitely.
And I like to think it's the movie's problem, not mine, because I'm like, if Ving Rhames' character died, I might feel something, but I do think that's in part because he's been in the franchise. I think he's the only one who's been in all of them.
I think so.
Yeah. And I think, they have developed his friendship with Tom Cruise a little bit. Simon Pegg, I think, gets a little more to do and a little more personality.
Right.
I just think they don't give the women any personality.
They don't. They do a good job of making them be, tough, and they fit right in. And I thought Haley Atwell was really good in this movie. And she's hanging with Cruise and all these stunts and all this crazy stuff. But again, if you're wanting to become the next Meryl Streep and win 4 Academy Awards, maybe don't sign up for Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, like, who were the lady leads in the 4th and 5th installments?
No idea.
I think actually Rebecca Ferguson showed up in the 5th. But
I think
the 4th one with Jeremy Renner, and then there was another lady who was like another spy.
No idea. No idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, just none at all.
So unless you have any other thoughts about this one specifically you want to talk about, I just want to ask, what you're thinking for part 2. Got any ideas of where that might go?
Honestly,
or where you
no.
Want to see it go?
I really don't. And I think that's good. That this was a good movie, and it did a good job of setting up this threat. Like we talked about, as good of a job as it needs to do. But what lies in store for part 2, I don't know. I mean, it definitely made it seem like they have to get down to the submarine, right?
Right.
So again, I have a lot of movie knowledge, but what these movies are about, I don't know. There's a sub, and that's where they have to get the key down to the sub.
I think so.
So it seems like that's going to happen, but because Cruise is Cruise, and they're going to dial up some kind of insane stunt. But no, I don't know what to expect other than, I guess, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. I honestly think I would just keep writing, smart enough screenplays for this franchise, and then just let Cruise do his thing. So I really don't have a whole lot of expectations other than I hope when I go see Dead Reckoning Part 2 in a year or 2 years or whenever it comes out that I will feel like I did after watching this one, where I'll just be happy. And Cruise did a lot of cool things, and the stunt work was top notch, and the movie was executed at a high level. How about you?
I was just thinking about what you're talking about. It is, I guess, difficult to up the stakes when every movie is the fate of the world is at stake. He's been disavowed by everyone. It's him against the world. It's hard to go like, well, in the next one, add on top of that. Well, there's not really anything to add on top of. But, yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be about what's going to be. I imagine they have the biggest, craziest stunt that they've dreamt up yet.
I'm sure.
To end a part 2 of a 2-parter. Yeah. Much the same way, I think I mentioned this last night, the train, I think, was a sort of throwback to Mission Impossible 1. I do think he's got to go underwater, that submarine. There was that epic Tom Cruise holding his breath for however many minutes scene. Probably be something to that effect, going in that submarine, and there will be all sorts of fun with that. But as far as the resolution of the plot, it's, they'll shut the thing down, I imagine.
They'll shut it down. You never know with Hollywood anymore. I've heard where this was supposed to be it. Dead Reckoning Part 2 is supposed to be it. But I've also, I saw Tom Cruise go on record saying he hopes to keep making these movies for as long as he can. So I really don't know. My question would be, do you think they need to keep going after Dead Reckoning 2? Are we going to start to get, no matter how amazing Cruise is and how amazing it is that he actually does these stunts, are we eventually going to hit a wall where we just go, okay, like...
I think it's going to be hard to keep thinking up things that shock and surprise us. Because they really have. I mean, when he hung off that skyscraper, that was like, this is amazing. Then he held onto a plane that was actually flying.
He did.
And then it's all the crazy helicopter stunts in Fallout,
which he actually did,
which were some insane. Like
Cruise got. I did research this. Cruise got his helicopter license and learned how to. So in Fallout, when that plane, spins around and tips, so someone Cruise did that. Right. The guy's insane.
Exactly.
You almost think it's going to get to a point where it's like, well, they just, even in this one, we'll go back to the spoilers real quick. The reason why Cruise has to drive his motorcycle off of a mountain is because their magical face-making machine just broke.
Right.
And I did that. That was a little lazy, and Simon Pegg's like, no, I can't fix it. It's broke. I think he even said it's broke really bad. Yeah. He said something to that effect. So while it's awesome, and I'm not trying to be critical, it did kind of feel like that was just a really quick, easy, almost lazy way. Like, well, this is why he needs to ride his motorcycle off a mountain. It wasn't annoying to me, but I did notice it. And I feel like if they keep making these movies, it's just going to get to the point where it's almost venturing into unintentional comedy. Like, what can go wrong so that Cruise has to jump out of a spaceship or whatever? It's going to get ridiculous at some point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why this is the Fast and the Furious franchise for dads. We laughed last night about the end of that stunt, him jumping off the mountain, parachuting down, is he crashes into the train at the exact right time to take out a bad guy, but he crashes through the wall of a train. It's like he hit hard enough to bust a hole in the
he
side
would
of
have
the
broken
train,
every bone in his body.
But he was okay. And I think that's the part of the stunts where it's like, how do we make the stunts incredible, but also like make sense and be like realistic that this dude's not just going to die. So it doesn't become unintentional comedy. And you're probably right about that we might be near the limit.
We might need, and I'm just a big, quit while you're ahead, Tom Cruise. You're at the top of the mountain, literally and figuratively. Just go out on top, Tom Cruise. Yeah. You have nothing left to prove. You've earned your title as probably the all-time greatest action movie star, I guess, and certainly willing to do what nobody else is willing to do. I do feel like if we get Mission Impossible 8, 9, 10, it's going to get silly.
I'll tell you what I think would be the right move for Tom Cruise.
Okay.
That I think he would really get into and would be excellent. Come be the villain in John Wick 5.
Yeah.
And him and Keanu can be an old man dedicated to the craft.
Everyone's brains would explode. Well, that's an interesting question, too. What is next for Tom Cruise? Which, like you said, we could do a 4-hour Tom Cruise podcast.
Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll go ahead and transition now. We'll talk a little bit about Tom Cruise because I asked Andy, I said, let's talk a little bit briefly about like some of our favorite Tom Cruise movies. And he's had a 30-year career, so there's way too many to talk about all of them. Could be our whole podcast. But I think you can break Tom Cruise's career into stages.
Yeah.
For
sure.
The first stage is the rising star. He plays the young hotshot everything.
Yes.
He's the young hotshot pilot,
bartender,
young hotshot bartender, young
race
hotshot
car driver,
young hotshot lawyer, and
pool player.
Pool player.
Yeah.
This is what he's so good at playing the cocky young guy.
He's so good at it.
And then sort of your mid-90s to early 2000s, he was like, okay, I want to prove I'm serious actor Tom Cruise. He's doing Magnolia. He's doing Eyes Wide Shut. He's, taking on weirder projects. Even Jerry Maguire was like, I'm going to play a hotshot, yes. But I'm going to be the romantic lead that maybe is a little different than I've been typically. And so he had this, I'm going to be a real actor stretch. Yes, and then it's like, he got weird, and there was almost like a mini break in there where it's like, Cruise is weird and we don't really like Cruise.
Yes, there was a little bit of Cruise backlash at some point.
Yes, and then it became crazy action, stuntman, alien Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And it's really the Mission Impossibles, and there's other good movies sprinkled in there.
There are.
But this is the action stage, and it's almost like he's decided this is just what he wants to do. Top Gun Maverick and the Mission Impossible movies are like, this is what he's all about.
I think so. And you just can't help but wonder, is he ever going to try and go back and do a Magnolia type? Is he ever going to be in a PTA movie?
Yeah.
Is he ever going to do a Scorsese movie? Is he ever going to do another Scorsese movie? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I would love to see it. I think, because I still think he's got it in him.
He's a good actor.
I just think he's it's kind of like James Cameron. James Cameron is a great director, but as a director, he's almost more interested in like, what can I do?
Yeah.
Than like really anything else. And
pushing
Cruise
the
is like,
limits.
what can I do is become that's my new thing.
Yeah.
And so he's not just going to take on any old project.
He's not. And I really do wonder now that he is the Mission Impossible Top Gun Maverick guy, if he even can go back, or if people will just reject it and say, no, I don't want this Cruise anymore. I want action star Tom Cruise. I don't know. I really don't know. It'll be really interesting to see.
And maybe it's again just sort of a product of who he is in his career now, where it's probably really hard for him to play just a normal guy. That stretch in the late 90s, he was in Magnolia. He's playing an eccentric guy, but it's kind of like he's just a dude. Yeah. And maybe it's just too hard for him to be just a dude.
I think he's forgotten how to do that.
Yeah.
Like if you go back into the 80s, like in Rain Man, he's like, I think he owns he sells cars or something like that. Like he's never just a totally regular guy.
Right.
But he's somewhat regular guy in that movie.
Yeah,
I don't even know if he knows how to do that anymore.
He's essentially playing the straight man. It's not straight man like Comedy Man, but Rain Man is the eccentric character and he's the straight man. And now it's, I don't know.
I'm going to be really interested to see where he goes from here. And another interesting thing about Cruise is he takes on these movies that basically just consume 2 years of his life from the time they develop, Top Gun, let's say. They develop it. He usually has to go out and learn a new skill. Like, we got a whole production for 8 months because I have to go learn how to fly a jet plane. And then they make the movie, and he's all in on promotion. So whatever project he signs on to, it takes like a big chunk of his life. So I just don't know if that's just what he wants to do. Like, I want to do a movie every 2 or 3 years. I'm 1,000% committed. I'm all in, and that's just what I'm going to do. Or, like we said, will he want to dip back into I'll just take a small role in the new Jordan Peele movie, or whoever. There's a lot of interesting things he could do, and a lot of interesting people he could work with.
And if you read the news headlines, apparently he loves every kind of movie.
Oh my gosh,
he thinks every kind of movie is the best.
I think I texted you first. Where was it a tweet that Cruise did, and he was praising Barbie, right? Is that how it started?
Well, I'd say the first one I remember him talking about was the Flash movie.
Yes,
but apparently
Flash.
He loved the Flash.
I think I even read where the director was like, Cruise called me, and he spent like 10 minutes telling me how great the Flash was.
Yeah, I think he's talked about it with Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yes, he posted a picture of, that's what it was. It was him and McQuarrie. They posted pictures of themselves. They were going to go see them both, and I don't know.
And then apparently he did the same thing with the Blue Beetle, where he called the lead actor of that one and told him how great it was. And
Cruise just wants to get along with everybody.
He does, and you know what? I love that he loves movies.
I do too. I really do. Say what you will about the guy or his personal life, but he obviously loves movies. He loves making movies, and he wants to do it.
Yeah, so that's why, as much as I don't expect him to do it, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised if he shows up in something we didn't expect and does a real acting performance again, because he seems to love movies.
It seems like the one sure thing you can bet on is that he will only do theatrically released movies.
That is true.
He seems very against a prestige TV or a streaming, straight to streaming movie. I think there was I think you can find a lot of stuff on the internet. They really tried to get Top Gun to just go to streaming, and Cruise completely refused. I mean, it just wasn't even an option. So I do think he'll only be a movie theater guy. I don't think he'll ever do a prestige TV or an Apple series or anything like that. So
all right, so I'm gonna give you my sort of 3 top Cruise movies / recommendations. If people haven't seen these, as movies that I think we both would say like worth your time to go see. And again, Cruise has got more than 3 good movies, so anybody like, I can't believe you didn't mention this one or that one. Like, we've probably seen it, we probably love it, unless you picked something terrible. I was trying to. He probably doesn't have as many duds as a lot of actors.
He doesn't have. I wrote down all of his movies. He does not have a lot of duds. The Mummy. He tried to relaunch
the Dark
Mummy.
Universe thing.
Yeah, that failed really badly. No, there's just not a lot of bad movies in here. I mean, in the 80s, the funny thing about Cruise is in the 80s, when we joked about this last night, he made Cocktail, which is just literally a movie about him wanting to own a bar one day and being a bartender. I don't think anyone's going to argue it's a great movie. It was a hugely successful movie.
Yeah.
So even his movies that maybe from I'm a snooty movie watcher guy, you're not going to like, but they were entertaining and they were successful. He does not have a lot of duds on his resume.
Right.
Honestly, I would think maybe just looking like The Mummy is one of his biggest duds. He did Rock of Ages, which I think kind of just came and went. I don't think it made a big splash. It's not really a movie that was. I'm not the core audience for that. Right. I don't think it made a big impact.
I saw it. Yeah, I was like, it's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
And that was the one I actually respected Cruise for, because he did something like, you're going, I can't believe Tom Cruise did this part, and so, good for him.
I think you could probably make the argument. I mean, I'd really have to comb through my list here. I really don't think Tom Cruise has ever been actively bad in a movie.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I just don't think he ever had, whether the movie's good or whether it works or whether you like the way his character was written, I don't think Tom Cruise himself has ever hurt a movie with his performance.
He's never done anything that you go like, that is a weird choice. Why did you do that?
That was a really weird choice, and that really drug this movie
down. So my 3, I'll go 3 to 1.
Okay.
Which the first 2 were the easiest ones for me to pick. My third one, I fluctuated through a lot of movies, but I'm just going to go with Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat, which I think was very underrated. I think because Cruise was not, it was sort of in that Cruise lull where people
I wonder if that may have still come out when there was a little Cruise backlash, or I don't remember.
Yeah, and I think it was a hard movie to advertise because it's basically like, hey, it's Groundhog Day, but for sci-fi
there's some
action.
Aliens and but it is a good movie.
But a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Really cool action, but a lot of fun. So Edge of Tomorrow. My second one is Collateral. Michael Mann.
Okay, I wondered if you were
going to mention that. That was very close to my favorite one.
Yeah. So Cruise is the bad guy.
Cruise is the bad guy.
And he has gray hair.
Yeah, I think to this day, I think it's his only villain performance.
I believe so.
Unless you want to count him as a villain in Tropic Thunder, but it's his only villain performance.
And also, spoiler alert for that movie, maybe one of the only times Cruise has ever died on screen in a movie. I can't think off the top of my head of another one. Maybe like something like Interview with the Vampire or something. I honestly can't remember. But
he's alive at the end of that.
Is he?
They like burn him and stuff, but then he comes back at the end. He hops in a car with Christian Slater.
Of course he does.
Turn him or something.
Of course he does.
But
yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah. So
Michael Mann
Collateral.
movie.
Yes, it's great. Jamie Foxx performance too, by the way.
Jamie Foxx is great.
Probably Cruise had something to do with that. He probably helped pull something out of Jamie Foxx that he didn't know he had. But and I think about that when I think about Cruise should be a bad guy in John Wick 5. I kind of joke, but I honestly think like
he could just play the guy, the Collateral guy.
He was so good in Collateral as the bad guy hitman. Like he'd be great doing it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Collateral, definitely watch it. I saw it in the theater. I've seen it 5 or 6 times since then. It's a really good movie.
Yeah, and then number 1 is kind of an obvious pick. It's A Few Good Men.
Yeah,
I am
Sorkin
I am a
wrote that,
Sorkin
right?
fan
Yeah.
above all else. Like
Sure.
the number one thing that will get me to a movie is written by Aaron Sorkin,
And then you have Tom Cruise delivering
Yes.
Sorkin's dialogue.
And I'll say that, like, Sorkin's dialogue can make a lot of people look really good.
Sure.
But you also just need people who are good at delivering the dialogue. And Cruise he's exceptional.
Oh, he's
about
great at
delivering.
it.
He can deliver a line
He can.
with the best of them.
He can. He knows when to get big and when to yell and to be passionate, and he knows how to do like we talked about with even the Mission Impossible movies, just the Cruise glance or serious face or kind of the Cruise side eye. And yeah, it's a really good movie, and it holds up really well. I've seen it probably within the last 6 months. It's a really good movie.
And it's an easy recommend one. I think it's got pretty universal appeal.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone that's like, man, I hate A Few Good Men. I just don't like that movie at all.
Yeah. Though I will say, I put a poll on Instagram yesterday asking for people's favorite Cruise movie, and I think the most popular answer was Top Gun Maverick. I think in part because it's new, but also it's like that movie might have the widest appeal of any movie I've ever seen. We're just kids, adults, everybody can love.
Yeah,
Top Gun
I wouldn't
Maverick.
fault anybody for putting that on their Tom Cruise list. As a matter of fact, it'll probably end up on mine.
Yeah.
So, is it my turn?
It's your turn.
So, I actually purposefully didn't think about this a lot ahead of time. I kind of wanted to just see where my mind was after we were done talking. And it's tough because Cruise has a good resume. He broke out in the early 80s, and he's been relevant ever since. There was some Cruise, but there's ups and downs a little bit, but he's been he's been in the public eye all that time. I think it's easy to get wrapped up in Tom Cruise, and you forget that the guy can act. And even if the movie, I'll go ahead and put Top Gun Maverick on mine. I don't know that I have an order. I'm just going to give you 3. And I definitely would put Top Gun Maverick because that's just Cruise, just his excitement and his charisma elevating a movie to the point where it made literally over $1 billion. I've never talked to anybody that doesn't like it. I mean, that's Cruise. Just strapping a movie to his back and just being like, all right, everybody just come with me. I've got this. So I would put Top Gun Maverick on there. I was gonna put Collateral on mine. It's close, so I won't dwell on that since we talked about it. I'm a big Minority Report guy. I always have been. It almost frustrates me because I feel like it's a forgotten Tom Cruise movie, and it's a Steven Spielberg movie.
That's what I say. That's what's amazing about it.
It's
Cruise and Spielberg, both when they got their fastballs,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think they both still have them, but
Sure.
In the public eye, Spielberg was still like any Spielberg release was a big deal. Cruise release was a big deal, and they do it together. It's a big hit, and then it
just
sort of
I never
fades.
hear any conversation about it. It's a futuristic whodunit. It's got an unbelievable sequence. It's going to sound weird just explaining it briefly, but there's like these mechanical spiders that scan people's eyes, and there's this shot where these spiders are running through an apartment, and Spielberg shoots it overhead, and this giant stage he built for the movie. It's phenomenal, and I just don't think it gets talked about enough. So I would definitely put that on there. And, if you hadn't already talked about it, I would definitely say A Few Good Men. I would say if you want the full Cruise experience too, watch Jerry Maguire. I mean, it was a big deal at the time. I do think it holds up well. I think Cruise is really good in it. It's a Cameron Crowe movie. Cameron Crowe was able to he has just a very unique voice. Like, he writes and directs most of his own, or of course he directs his own movies, but he writes, I think, his own movies. And Cruise is a sports agent, and like you said, it's very Tom Cruise-y. He's the hot shot, but it's a good movie, and there's, it's a little sappy at times, but it really gives you, I think, a good idea of who Cruise was in the 90s, and he's really good in it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the hang up with most people. That movie is it's most known for its most cheesy moments.
It is the show me the money or the
just the you had me at hello.
Hello.
That line became such like a parody.
It did,
but it's one line in a whole movie that the whole movie is,
and honestly,
is a solid movie.
It is a solid movie, and it all builds to the you had me at hello,
right.
And it works because Cruise is good, Renee Zellweger is good. It's I'm not saying it's in my top 5 favorite movies, but it's a good movie, and it gives you the Tom Cruise experience, I think.
Right.
So interesting that none of us picked any of his early stuff.
Yeah, I know, and
I don't dislike it,
right,
but you know, The Outsiders, Risky Business, Top Gun, the original Top Gun, Color Money, Cocktail, some of those, but yeah. But you throw in any Tom Cruise movie, I think you're going to at least be entertained.
Yeah, I think you know, we'll kind of end with this. I've got this I don't know, I wouldn't call it a theory, but this philosophy, or I don't know, opinion that there's two types of really good actors. There's the really good actor who really embodies a whole new person and disappears into the role. You think of Daniel Day-Lewis as the peak of this.
Right.
You know, when you watch, you don't even realize you're watching Daniel Day-Lewis because
he gets lost in the role.
Right.
And
like I always joke that Tommy Lee Jones was really good in the movie Lincoln. But I would sit there and be like, man, Tommy Lee Jones is doing a really good job acting alongside Lincoln.
Yeah.
Not Daniel Day-Lewis, because Daniel Day-Lewis is so good, you don't even realize you're watching him.
Correct.
So that's one type of really great actor. And the other type is the actor who's just so enjoyable to watch on screen, so at ease. It's not even to say that they're not good at becoming other characters, but, you know, my top of this list is Brad Pitt. I think of Brad Pitt as like... You know,
it's a great choice.
He may not disappear and you realize you're watching Brad Pitt, but he's just so likable on screen. Like he's great at acting into his face. He makes great little expressions.
He's funny. He's secretly a really funny guy.
Yeah, and I do think he's a really good actor. You know, I think of like Moneyball might be his best acting performance.
Probably.
And like watching that movie, I would think, you know, he's acting like a pretty normal guy, like just who likes baseball and stuff. And when I read that Brad Pitt had never even played baseball, I was like, that's amazing, because he embodied everything I think of baseball guys.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, there is great acting there, but it's mostly just an ease of which they do everything on screen, you know? Like, you need to be likable on the screen, you need to sell this joke or this part or something, like, they can just do it. And Cruise is one of those guys who he is just... watchable on screen.
He is. I would put him on the Mount Rushmore of just most watchable people on screen. He can, you know, if the movie's great, he can be great in it. If the movie's so-so, he can elevate it. And, you know, like we talked about, I think last night and during this, if he's beating somebody up, you believe it. Even though Tom Cruise in real life is like, he's short, he's a pretty small guy, but Tom Cruise, what a guy. My theory is that just Tom Cruise is not of this earth. He's an alien, and like you said, he has like a how to act like a human being handbook, and he can only do up to what he's read. Just like we were talking about with his romances, he just hasn't read like what you do after you cuddle with someone on a balcony in Rome. He doesn't know what comes next. So, just what a guy.
And I think we both agree. Sadly, the ultimate end of Tom Cruise is going to be he's going to go until he dies in a stunt. Yeah. And that'll be Tom Cruise.
I think, you know, if that's what happens, Chris McQuarrie or someone will be at his funeral and they'll say, this is how he wanted to go.
Absolutely.
This is the way he wanted to go out. Yeah. Tom Cruise. Unbelievable. Mission Impossible. Ton of fun. Yeah. Definitely see it definitely see it in the theater. See it in the IMAX if you can.
Tom Cruise, he earned it, putting his life on the line. Go out there to a theater, see it on the big screen, and I think everybody can enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that does it for episode one. Hopefully many more to come.
Yet to be named podcast.
Yet to be named podcast.
Are we open to suggestions?
I think we are. Okay. So if anybody's got good suggestions,
just send them our way.
Send them our way. Yeah. And we'll tell you some already really bad ones have been nominated, so the
bar is low. Yes, the bar is low, so don't be shy.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy.
Yep, we will see you guys next time.
Absolutely.